All right. Thank you so much. We're going to wait here just a few more minutes for any last minute attendees to come in, and then we will get started here in a few minutes. All right, welcome everybody to LACONI POP's Sustainability in Action Programs and Practices webinar, part 2. We are excited to continue exploring ways to implement sustainability at our libraries. My name is Natalie Finland, and I'm on the LACONI POP Advisory Board, as well as the Adult Services Assistant Manager at the Orland Park Public Library. Today, we have 4 amazing panelists who will speak about various aspects of implementing sustainability at your library. So we're looking forward to hearing from them. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. We will be accepting questions in the chat or the Q&A tab. So if you notice a technical issue or have a question for our panelists, please don't hesitate to pop a note in there. And we will be keeping an eye on those throughout the presentation. The webinar is being recorded, and we plan on sending out that along with the presentation slides in a few weeks to everybody who has registered. And if you love LACONI POP webinars, which I'm sure you do because you're here, do I have great news for you? We are hosting another webinar in a few weeks called Civic Literacy and Collaboration, and that will be on Monday, November 10th, discussing how libraries are bringing civil literacy to patrons through programming and collaboration with community partners. So we hope you can join us then. Chelsea has just shared the link to registering for that if you are interested. So without further ado, let's get started. I will now introduce our first panelist, Rebekkah Smith Aldrich. She serves as the Executive Director of the Mid-Hudson Library System in New York. Rebekkah is a co-creator of the Library of Local program, along with Partners for Climate Action Hudson Valley, which is devoted to strengthening community resilience through partnerships catalyzed between public libraries and neighbors. Rebekkah is also the co-founder and board president of the award-winning Sustainable Libraries Initiative, or SLI, and principal author of the award-winning Sustainable Libraries Certification Program for public, academic, and school libraries. Rebekkah was the principal author of the National Climate Action Strategy for Libraries and the Companion Implementation Guide, and has authored 3 books on the topic of sustainability for ALA. So we are so excited to have her here. So Rebekkah, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Natalie, and thank you everyone for taking some time to learn more about sustainability and what that actually looks like as you carry out your work from a day-to-day perspective. So I think my job here today is to kind of set the stage, give you some of the basics of where we're coming from, some of the underpinnings of the work we've been doing at the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. And then I promise some fun stuff that actually is bringing it to life of how libraries in our program have been doing this work, and some pro tips for you to think really holistically about how you do what you do, which I know you already are thinking about because you're actually here today. But I wanted to kind of set the stage here as we kick things off for your program here today, because I think no one would deny you're seeing headlines on an everyday basis that remind you that climate change is here and it's not good. It's being very disruptive in our communities, to our economy, and really sometimes concerns about our own life in terms of how dangerous some of the weather is we're experiencing across the country. So, you know, you're in one state here, you've got a nice group of people working together. You've probably identified what your primary climate hazards are for your corner of the world. But the truth is, it's just going to get tougher as we move forward. In 2020, in the midst of COVID, climate scientists were trying to get our attention, letting us know that we turned a corner. Really, even if we do everything right when it comes to climate change mitigation, it's just going to continue to get worse for at least another 30 years, which is most of our careers. So I'm sorry to be a bummer on this topic, but I just want to let you know you're not crazy. Exactly what you're seeing is actually happening, and it is predicted to get worse, more severe, more frequent. In fact, if you look at the data of how often we see these massive storms, sometimes they call them billion-dollar events in our country. It went from the 1980s of seeing one of those every 82 days. Now we see them about every 18 days. So that pace is way, way faster these days and far more disruptive to our world. So when we think about the fact that the climate crisis that we're in now will affect the life of every child alive today, kind of brings home the scope and scale of what we're dealing with. So other big things to be thinking about is the kind of what the natural world, how that's behaving right now, but also society and how we are or not working together on some of the issues that need our attention. This is a not so fun report to read every year from the World Economic Forum, but it helps policymakers and investors understand what the biggest threats are to both human health and the economy on a global scale. Now, every year up until this year, both the 2-year horizon and 10-year horizon items have been extreme weather, climate change related issues. And this year you can see on the 2-year horizon, number one is actually not a climate change related item. It's related to AI generated misinformation and disinformation, which is also in our wheelhouse. So take that for what you will. But as we try to tackle these concerns we have, right, we're dealing with society that feels perhaps more and more fractured. So our ability to come together and problem solve together and work together for a common good has never seemed more challenging as it is in the world here today, which I don't know about you, but every once in a while, this is how I'm feeling. Like, that's a lot all at once. And where do I even start? So most of us got into this profession because we like to help people, and we can't spread ourselves too thin, right? We've got to spend our time on the things that matter. We'll have outcomes that make a difference for our organizations and the people that we serve. And so pulling ourselves out of kind of this like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm concerned about so many things. We have to find a through line to find a way to move forward. And that's the work of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. That's what we've been working on for just about 10 years now. We're in our 10th year of operations. I think you probably heard Natalie say, I have a day job. I run a cooperative public library system. It's a pretty big organization. I have 66 libraries. This is my hobby. This is my volunteer work that I do. But luckily, it all dovetails and works well together, because I really see part of my job is making sure my libraries are responsive to their community. They're relevant to the people that they serve. They're realistic about what climate hazards are going to do to their communities, but really making sure libraries are vital and vibrant and visible and doing good work that matters. Is really where we focused our attention. And again, threading that needle for how do you do that in the midst of a kind of a lot of chaos has been a big, big lift. So hopefully many of you here today know that sustainability was adopted as a core value of our profession just about 6 years ago now, which is a big deal. And it really has changed the conversation across our profession about where we spend our time, how we do our work. So for those of you that haven't seen this yet, this is the definition of sustainability sustainability that we're using and is embedded in the work that the American Library Association does, which follows the model of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. But the idea here is it's not just going green, that we understand this is a systemic, complex issue, and we can't just consider how much something costs from a monetary standpoint. We have to be responsible enough to recognize there's environmental costs and human health costs to the decisions that we make, large and small. So sustainability is about trying to find the best balance possible amongst these three things when you make a decision. Good examples are easy, maybe easy to relate to examples might be what you're buying for summer reading program incentives. Does it reflect your values as an institution, or is it something that you'll throw away in about 5 minutes and it will never biodegrade as long as the earth still stands? It could be as big as your building or even your community, how you're measuring how successful and sustainable it is. And the closer we can get to balance amongst these three things, the more resilient an item, a building, a community will be. So the idea here is progress, not perfection. You don't have to nail it every time. We don't want you to be like frozen in the grocery store aisle, like I get sometimes in front of the toothpaste, and I don't even know what to pick because I'm wondering, where were the ingredients? Were these people paid a living wage? Am I making a responsible decision? But you want to educate yourself as a consumer. You're spending a lot of money on behalf of your community. You're also creating programs, collections, partnerships every day through the work that you do. When done through this lens, our experience over the past 10 years has been libraries are better positioned for the future than they had been before we started using this approach. So in the 10 years we've been doing this work, we've identified 4 attributes of what we call a sustainable library. And number one is this work is happening from the inside out. Your policies, procedures, the way library workers are treated, the way the building is run from an operational standpoint really reflects the values we have in terms of caring about taxpayers, about the environment, about human health. So that idea of living our values out loud. Number 2 is where we're going to spend a bit of my time here with you this afternoon, which is the deliberate adoption of the priority of working on civic participation and social cohesion, helping people see each other as humans and relating to each other and being willing to work together in the future. And then the last 2 things here are things I bet you are not surprised to hear me talk about, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions and doing that the best we can in our work, as well as being an active participant in adaptation work, which helps our communities be more resilient in the face of what is predicted to happen in our corner of the world. And so our work is really to make sure both the library profession is going in the same direction, and that our libraries are catalysts for helping our communities go in a strong direction. So I love this organization, LACONI Pop, because it's really sharing knowledge, sharing best practices, and helping us kind of stop just dancing alone in our own corners and start pulling together in directions that really are meaningful and make a difference going forward. So I obviously have, a small amount of time here with you today, but if you want to dig a little deeper into some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, I'd highly recommend this document. It's about 19 pages long, a lot of examples, practical tips about how to carry out some of the stuff we're going to talk about here today. So if you haven't seen this yet, use the QR code, get that lined up in one of your tabs to, take a look at another time. But the strategy itself is just this one page with 3 things on it. And I'm going to unpack that for you here today, give you some examples and a place to go to learn more. So the strategy, again, 3 components. Number 1 is something you're all very familiar with, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I bet there's folks on this call who ride their bike places, have an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle. You have a reusable water bottle, like you're trying to reduce how much waste you're producing. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we all have to take personal and professional responsibility for that. What your sphere of influence is in your job, your mileage will vary on what that looks like. But, for folks working on programs and outreach, that kind of work, a lot of your influence will be in the area of reducing waste into the waste stream. And so we'll talk about a few examples of how you might do that. The second area of work is the adaptation work, which is really making sure we're ready for what might happen because of the climate hazards in our area. So that idea of preparing, we understand what's possible, and adjusting and being more flexible to make sure library services are delivered, our library workers, as well as our community members, are safe in the face of what is predicted to happen. There's a whole host of things we can be doing in terms of outreach and programming in this area. This list is generated from another webinar series series we did with Web Junction. You can go check that out if you would like. But just a few cool ideas that are here, many of which you may recognize, but really understanding we need to have a deliberate effort of being a partner, of helping library workers and community members be more prepared in the face of what is predicted. That's both acute preparedness of like having a go bag and having a plan to meet up with family if you have to evacuate, but also long-term preparedness, food security in our communities. Do we know how to grow our own food? Do we know who the master preserver is in the community? Do we have community gardens? We know who is who and what assets we have to survive in these, really challenging situations. These are all things we should actively be thinking about, and not just when the tornado warning comes, right? We need to be prepared far in advance of that. The last part of that equation is, sometimes we call it climate justice, but it's actually very simple when you think about it. We're trying to increase people's empathy, respect, and understanding for each other so they're able to work together and really understand that not everyone is going to experience the future the same way as they might. So this is where you folks shine in terms of programming, outreach, all the cool stuff you get to do with your communities, because a lot of this is programming work and outreach and raising the visibility of the library as a really strong partner in this work. And this is really where I think libraries' legacies will lie in our future. When we look back at our careers, we're going to turn around and be like, the work we did really helped people come together as neighbors and feel like part of something bigger than themselves. And that perhaps might be the cornerstone of the work that needs to be done on the topic of sustainability, is to get over those partisan divides, help people who never would have spoken to each other come together and learn together and feel a little less isolated. That's going to be the key to our success in our community. So a lot of this, I hope, looks familiar to you. If you want to dig in deeper, as I said, there's a whole webinar series where you can learn more about this, and I brought some examples for you here today. But little things like repair cafes where people learn to fix small things together, hopefully will help them fix larger things together in our communities. But this takes all different flavors. It's going to look different from community to community, depending on what your particular situation is, the politics of your community, the economics of your community. But there's certainly a lot of choices to choose from of how to do good work in this area. And in my book, this is really the secret formula, I guess we could say, of what really works, which is getting people out of their houses, more active, having a sense of purpose, working together as a community to make good things happen. And the research just shows over and over again, that's how we reduce social isolation, reduce anxiety, reduce the friction that we're often seeing, particularly around politics, which is absolutely supercharged by 24/7 media and social media as well. So I brought some examples so you can see how libraries in our program are putting this into practice. I broke it up into three, I hope, relatable categories. But number one is that whole idea from the inside out. We walk the walk. If we understand what's going on, we're very smart people. We have to demonstrate that in how we carry out our work. So we recommend using what's called the zero waste hierarchy to train staff who are purchasing things to make sure, did we really need to buy that? Are we buying the best possible choice using that triple bottom line analysis? Are we prioritizing the local economy and purchasing from local people? For craft programs, are we upcycling or crowdsourcing materials for craft programs? Really showing people what's possible when we all work together. It's pretty impressive how a lot of libraries in our program have reduced their carbon footprint just by some of these very simple, smart things they're doing with just more deliberation. Now, infusing what I call eco-literacy, like into everything we do. It's not just about Earth Month or Earth Day or some kind of, one-off day that you pick to be green in the library. We should be doing this stuff all the time. Staff should be trained in eco-literacy and how it intersects with the work they do. Regular displays from our collection that help promote different aspects of sustainability, community resilience, self-reliance, programs, right? That's where it's at these days. We have a whole program database where you can learn what's worked in other communities if you're interested in that. But getting people connected with nature, respecting nature, getting some fresh air, getting outside for a walk together, all this good stuff you can be the catalyst for, which can really increase not only people's respect for nature, but when they experience that together, that's really where the strength in this work lies. Third here is raising the library's profile through partnerships with folks that are also doing good work in this area, making sure first responders are celebrated, well respected, and understand what the library offers to the community, because you are a massive asset to them as well, as they are to you. But using other events to piggyback, do programming, find new partners to help you elevate some of these issues, that's a great way to raise your profile in the community. And for people who maybe thought the library didn't have any for them, to see how relevant and really on the money you are with the work that you're doing. The Sustainable Library Certification Program is an aspect of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. It's a program that helps you methodically do what I'm describing here through 12 different categories of work. We have over 60 libraries across the country and Canada that have completed that certification program, and you can learn a lot from them. And what you're going to see over and over again is that they're just bringing people together. They're using their educational platform as a library to help people learn more about the world around them. They're sometimes catalysts for community service projects and doing good work together and having fun while we're doing it, because this is some heavy stuff we're talking about, and how we make people see it's not as scary as it needs to be if we work together is really a through line that needs to be evident throughout everything we're doing. So you're seeing things here on the left is the Lindenhurst Library. Everyone collected bottle caps. They're making a beautiful mural of an octopus out of recycled bottle caps. The Don't Be a Barb was my favorite post from my member libraries this year. It's about garden ergonomics. Hauppauge Flea, this is our co-founder, Matt Bollerman, his library. They transform their parking lot into a market once a month where folks can come and do their own little tag sale. It's a farmer's market. Local businesses come and hang out. It's so powerful to see that community come together in that space. But if you're looking for more ideas, you can check out the presentations of all the libraries who have completed the program. You can use this QR code to access their presentations. There's literally thousands of ideas embedded just right there in those presentations. And if you want to get more methodical about this work, there's a couple of other resources I wanted to bring to your attention. On the left there is the Roadmap to Sustainability, which is available as a mobile app. We partnered with OCLC to create that, and that's a personal tool for you to gather your own thinking around this topic, to really kind of think about how it kind of spiders into everything you do, and really connecting with some of the language and methodologies that are working for libraries in this program. And then the certification program is when you want to go all in and your library wants to be known as a sustainability leader in your community. That's where to go for that type of work. So I'll just point out that if any of your libraries are in the Association of Rural and Small Libraries, you get free membership in the SLI. If someone's active in your library's, your state's library association, let them know. They could give us a call, no cost partnership, and you guys get free membership in the SLI and a discount on the certification program. But there's also free resources on the website you can get without ever joining the organization. Don't tell my board we said that, but that's true. But I think you're going to find a really good community that's very engaged, doing great work, and you can learn a lot and accelerate your understanding by joining that community of practice, either as a visitor or a member. So I want to respect the time of the panel, and I'll just put my contact info here. As you can tell, really into this topic. And it's been a fantastic journey over the past, for me, 15, 17 years of learning from people. And that's why I wrote the books and helped other people start telling their stories, because there's excellent work going on we can all learn from, because the truth is we have to move faster and faster in the face of what's happening. And there's a lot of forces working against us right now. So the more we can join arms and do good work and do so with urgency, that's where it's at here for the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. So Natalie, thank you for the invitation, and I'll shut my screen down here for the next group.
Thank you so much, Rebekkah. That was very informative. I am Mallory Knapp. I'm the Assistant Director at the Bartlett Public Library District, but I am also a member of the LACONI POP Advisory Board. And I'm here to introduce our next set of panelists. If anybody does have questions for Rebekkah, if you're thinking about it, all that's settling in, feel free to still drop it in the chat or the Q&A. We'll get to it at the end. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Mandi Goodsett, who is the Performing Arts and Humanities Librarian / OER and Copyright Advisor at Cleveland State University. She's actively involved in ALA's Sustainability Roundtable, a member of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative Advisory Board, and the co-founder and co-chair of the Academic Library Association of Ohio's Sustainability Interest Group. Her research is focused on misinformation, online learning, critical thinking, and sustainability in libraries. She will be joined with Evan Meszaros, who is the Research and Engagement Librarian supporting the Natural Sciences and Math at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. He has been involved in ALA's Sustainability Roundtable and is the co-founder and former co-chair of the Academic Library Association of Ohio's Sustainability Interest Group. His interests include sustainability and climate activism, misinformation, and science boosterism. So over to Mandi and Evan.
Thank you so much. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to LACONI Pop for inviting us. We're so excited to be here. It's wonderful I always get really jazzed whenever I hear from Rebekkah. So it's such an honor to be on a panel with her and to be here with all of you today. So we're going to actually kind of focus in on just one sort of category of things you can worry about in terms of sustainability. We're going to look at library swag, or kind of prizes or little things that you give out to your patrons. And then we'll also talk a little bit about library events and sustainability. So to introduce us, we're both academic librarians and we're both really passionate about sustainability. And the work we're going to talk about today, we did while we were involved in the ALA Sustainability Roundtable, which I highly recommend if you're an ALA member. I think it's like $15 to add Sustain RT to your membership. We also were both co-authors of a chapter in the book Libraries and Sustainability Programs and Practices for Community Impact, which was edited by Rebekkah, among others. So another connection with Rebekkah. So we're not going to get into everything we talked about in that chapter, and there are lots of other great chapters. So we recommend checking out this book if you're able to. So we're going to be talking about swag, and we're going to provide a rubric for you that you can use, modify, but it's essentially to help you figure out, both for library swag, but also for other materials that you purchase for your library, how to make more sustainable decisions. And this rubric is built on what's called life cycle analysis. So it's essentially thinking about the full life cycle of whatever it is that you're thinking of purchasing or obtaining. So that's, includes raw material extraction, manufacturing, distribution, use, and disposal or recycling. I think sometimes we tend to focus on disposal or recycling, or maybe a little bit like raw material extraction, depending on the item. So hopefully it'll be helpful and interesting to look at how some of these other pieces of how we use and produce products can have an influence on climate change and on sustainability more broadly. So I'm going to turn it over to Evan to talk about our rubric, and I'm going to put the link to it in the chat.
Thank you. And yeah, it's also on the screen there. I made a tiny URL. Yeah, so the idea for this actually came out from Mandi and I attending quite a few library conferences over the last decade. And, probably like most people living in our consumerist economy, we enjoy the swag that library vendors give out. And by that, I mean like the companies that sell library stuff on the exhibitor floor, while at the same time also being kind of depressed about the fact that a lot of it is plastic, quote unquote, disposable, single use, those kind of things. So think pens, of course. Think the little, plastic clips with the magnets on them, things that, sure, maybe they'll have longer lifetimes, but how are they produced? What are they made of? Where are they going to end up? What Rebekkah was saying just a little bit earlier. And so the idea for this kind of came out of that, and it was actually originally with the idea of the vendors themselves in mind. But then we said, well, why don't we make two rubrics? And so the one that we have linked here is for libraries themselves, because libraries also give out swag to their patrons, and I'd imagine mostly that's the case with public libraries, but we're at academic libraries, and we also have library and university branded swag that we hand out. So this is just a little snippet of the rubric, but we're going to go into kind of the actual analysis that we have there to kind of help people think about the specific objects that they're looking at. And it's going to rely on that previous slide of the life cycle analysis. So we have here the green bar. I've kind of put it on the top of all of these rows, and each one is, again, considering each aspect of the life cycle analysis. So the first one is extraction or transformation of the raw materials that go into making the actual swag object, item, handout, whatever it is. And so for those, you want to think about things like, a good example of swag would be something that's made of materials that are ethically sourced. They could be even, fair trade, and I think that's actually supposed to be capitalized. Oops. But something that is locally produced or maybe uses local materials in its production or construction, made of recycled material or compostable or something like that, and might meet other standards. It could be organic. That's probably supposed to be capitalized. But if the particular product, the agriculture that actually was used to, say, grow cotton or something matters to you, then maybe organic or vegan. There's a lot of consumer standards for objects and goods like Ecotech, and I think it's called the Green Seal, and there's a whole bunch of these that you can use to kind of, as a shorthand to figure out what might be good in this category. But think about also the poor examples of this swag that meet this criteria. Workers are maybe exploited or mistreated in the production of the object. And I was looking around my office at all of the swag I have about me and looking and thinking of like, especially with that one, and also materials produced far away. Those little batteries, those little cell phone batteries or chargers that were kind of popular for a while there. Maybe they still are, but I think of probably a lot of those are produced in the global south with materials that are difficult or destructive to mine. So thinking about those sorts of things in terms of the extraction, transformation of raw materials. The example here we also have is coming with Halloween coming up, palm oil that's used in especially chocolate candies. It's used in all kinds of stuff, but agricultural around palm oil is incredibly destructive to rainforest, as probably most of us know. The next criterion is manufacturing of that particular item. Good examples of this sort of swag are ones that are produced with low emissions in the production process, or they use renewable energy in the production. And of course, bad examples would be ones where they don't even think about it. And I think that's the manufacturer doesn't even think about or consider the emissions that are going into it. And so I think that's the default, and that's the unfortunate state of affairs. So, looking for products that at least, the manufacturer advertised that low emissions were used or renewable energy was used to produce it. In terms of packaging and distribution, again, the best examples of the swag are ones that have minimal or no plastic packaging or kind of disposable packaging. Maybe they're locally distributed, or their shipping emissions are offset. Bad examples would be ones where there's plastic, polystyrene, or other kind of landfill-bound materials. Maybe the item is shipped from a long distance away with a whole bunch of packaging and travel emissions that are not really accounted for, and you just don't think about. The next category is how it's used. This is the sort of thing that maybe it's a pen that, and this is especially, I guess, with the second point here, if you can have objects that stick around for a while, but like if you get a pen and that ink dries out and you rarely use it, you're just going to throw the whole thing away. And it's the same case too if you order a huge bunch of pens or get them from vendors, and we have them like we do in our library in a box and just kind of forget about them. Eventually the ink's going to dry out and the entire thing's going to be useless, and you're just going to have to throw the entire thing away. So you want to think about ordering enough for the particular event or the time period that you want to actually give it out for, and avoid single-use products and swag that was produced and is likely just to be discarded. And then the end of life, like Mandi was saying, that this is kind of what a lot of people, I think, tend to think of most. And you think of, is the object in whole or in part easily composted, recycled, biodegradable? You can look for those terms. They're helpful, or otherwise, are they able to be ethically disposed of? Whereas, again, the kind of default, I think, is just you can quote unquote throw it away, and it means it's just going to go to a landfill. We added one category to the life cycle analysis of our own, which is about the producer itself. And this is, thinking about the producer as a company, or whatever, that, maybe there are standards that it follows, like, does it have B Corp certification? Does it attempt to do more than just make a profit? Does it try to do something good for the world on top of making a profit? Or is the producer a woman, or BIPOC, or Indigenous, or refugee-owned business? Kind of connecting with the triple bottom line definition of sustainability that invokes social justice along with environmental and financial considerations. Or does it just, is it a poor example of swag and doesn't meet any of these standards? Is it just from a major corporation that's churning this stuff out? So, we can talk all day about bad examples of swag, and I was debating about showing bad examples, but I think we all know about that, and I've already given some ideas. What are better examples of swag? We've got a slide here that gives some ideas. Water bottles, especially ones that are glass or metal. These might be more on the expensive side. You could use these as like the prize for a particular event, and you wouldn't want to be handing these out like candy because they're very expensive. And for instance, we just for our family bought a bunch of water bottles that are steel and food grade silicone, and so no plastic involved. But they're expensive, and so we recognize that, and so it's not something that you could do very cheaply, at least. These sorts of utensil kits, they could be wooden, and if they're wooden, maybe you'd feel a little bit better about composting them if you needed to, but you could just get metal silverware and put them get the little cloth holder. Food is another one. This one is tricky because I think most people tend to have very strong sense of this, how sterile and packaged their food should be. But if they're okay with baked goods, putting them on a platter, maybe having like a glass kind of top on top to at least give the sense that people have not been breathing on this or whatever. But it doesn't have to be like individually wrapped piece of food in plastic or something like that. The plants are a great idea, ideally in like a ceramic or terracotta kind of pot. The tricky thing with that, just sort of like with mugs, I had gotten a mug recently as a gift for something, and of course it came in a box loaded with bubble wrap. It's the same sort of thing. They're fragile, and so these are probably another type of thing that if you can get it without all of that packaging, it's probably more of a prize gift, or something that you could do in a drawing rather than something you're handing out constantly. Notebooks are always popular. And then there's this, maybe it's been around longer than I've known, but this seed paper sorts of bookmarks that are, it's a paper that has kind of seeds embedded in it, wildflower seeds, and then you can just chuck it into your garden and it'll grow. It's a cool idea. I'm not sure exactly how useful the item is as a bookmark, but maybe your mileage may vary. But we also want to say, don't forget that experiences or gift cards to like local businesses or local museums or something like that could also make an excellent example of swag. And it doesn't even have to be a physical gift card. It could just be a virtual gift certificate, and those can work really well as well. I also included this slide. I had a couple days ago, I rassled up all of what I consider sustainable swag just in my office. And this isn't even everything. I found more stuff. I've got a lot of stuff in my office. But some examples here, in case you're still interested in finding some, are, and by the way, normally I'd probably kind of block out the names of some of the vendors, but in this case, I think credit where credit's due. Wiley did this excellent recycled cotton bag up on the top here. Elsevier did another recycled one that they also, I think the claim on there is that they donated 5% of the cost of the bag to Plastic Oceans, which, as you can imagine, does something with removing plastics from the ocean. Cleveland Public Library in our city of Cleveland here has been handing these bags out for rainy days for quite a long time, probably like 10 years now. And you might be able to see on the bottom, it says that this bag is completely, biodegradable and recyclable. It would be better probably if it were compostable, but hey, that's way better than what a lot of libraries do, which is just a plastic bag, right? And below that, I've got some examples. Some of the things are things that we hand out at our library. Some of them are just at my university. So we've got a notepad, paper/cardboard notebook. One that was more recent was a deck of cards. I thought that was kind of cool. Unfortunately, when you open the box, there's a plastic bag in there with the cards. I'm not sure why that's necessary, but maybe there's a manufacturer out there that will make a deck of cards without the plastic bag. Pens and pencils, old school pencils, just wood, and maybe the graphite is a problem when you actually eventually throw it out. Hopefully, you use the pencil down to its down to its nub. There's I included a pencil here that was made from recycled currency. I think it was from from the government that it took old currency and turned it into pencils. Pens that are made largely of cardboard or some sort of paper tagboard tube. Straws, metal glass straws. The glass one, unfortunately, is in a plastic wrapper. The good old bookmark. These are great for libraries, and you can of course put. You can't really see it in this photo, but there's QR codes that lead to our website and other resources that we have at our library. And then along the bottom, I included some coasters. There's a wood coaster, a ceramic one. These are. I noticed that these are a thing. You can actually kind of get these collectible ceramic coasters. This one's from the Library of Congress. Paper / kind of tagboard ones, and then also cork. So there's a lot of good examples out there. I think we're going to be redoing our swag guide at some point, and I'd like to include a lot more of the ones that I kind of discovered along the way, and I'd love to hear. I think both of us would love to hear your ideas if you've encountered better ideas or additional ideas, and we'd want to include them in the next version of the swag guide. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Mandi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if you have ideas and you want to share them even in the chat right now, some swag that you use in your library that you think is pretty good or that you've seen others use, it'd be great to hear what's going on. I also want to emphasize, like Rebekkah said earlier, I don't think anyone expects that we'll be like poring over all of the details of every single item we want to buy for a prize or for swag, to know its like entire past history. But I think if we are just a little bit more aware of the life cycle of something that we are thinking about buying, I think that can go a long way. I wanted to include some practical considerations if you, like me, are not the person in your library who decides what swag the library will buy, or if in general you're thinking about this and you're not the person in charge. So just some things to keep in mind. Building social capital, I think, is probably the most effective way. So if you can show over time that you are a nice person who is reliable and is willing to do things and help out for others in your workplace, then when you come to them with an idea like, hey, maybe we should think of following the swag rubric, you might have a little bit more success with that. You can also just start asking questions like, hey, how do we decide what, incentives we're going to use for our reading programs? Or if we're having a drawing, like how are we going to, who makes that decision and how do we decide that? And what's going to happen to those materials after the person's finished with them? So just getting more information can start to kind of raise people's awareness. Provide examples from other libraries. So if there's another library doing something cool, it can be helpful to say, hey, check it out. This other library is, their swag is bookmarks that you can plant and it grows a flower or whatever it might be. Like, isn't this so cool? One example that I have thought of, there is, and this is terrible because I don't remember which school, but there is a school, a university in Ohio that recently like solicited donations of clippings of plants from library staff, and then they put them in just like, old mugs or jars or whatever, and then they gave them out to students during finals week as like a stress relieving thing. And the students were so excited about getting these little plants. And I just thought that was incredibly cool. So ideas like that, you can bring to your staff that are in charge of purchasing swag as inspiration. And then finally, getting feedback from patrons. So if you talk to your patrons and say, what kinds of swag do you prefer? You might actually find that they prefer things like a gift card to a local, or even a coupon for a local business, as opposed to more stuff that, is going to probably end up in a landfill. We did want to just very briefly include some event planning tips from our chapter, just in case this is helpful. And then again, there's a lot more in the chapter itself. When you're thinking about library events, thinking about food and catering, so consider having some vegetarian, vegan, organic, fair trade food and beverage options. Even if that's not the only food that's available, just having it as an option, I think, is really important. I think it's often the culture, if you're going to have a speaker, to make sure that you have a plastic water bottle for them in case they get thirsty, or have it for your attendees. So kind of changing that culture to look more at like having just a pitcher of water or a water dispenser and some compostable cups, or encourage people to bring their own water bottle. A lot of people have their own water bottle these days, so that could be a transition that you feel like you can make. In terms of waste, make sure the waste streams for your event are really clear. It can be confusing, make them like 10 times more clear than you think they need to be, so people know where things need to go in terms of trash and recycling and compost, if you can offer that. And then this is a simple thing, but just provide a place for people to drop off unwanted programs, handouts, name tags, whatever it might be, so that you can dispose of those properly. And then kind of the big tip that I have is to have some sort of sustainable event planning policy or guide that you can point to, so you don't have to kind of renegotiate these things every time you have an event. If possible, having just some standards that you always try to meet can be really helpful. And we have a sustainable event planning guide that you're welcome to use and modify. I'm going to put a link in the chat here for you all in case it's helpful. And here's a question: what's the best swag you distributed that's most popular? I don't know what has been most popular. I think food is actually, I don't know if that counts as swag, but our population really likes food.
Yeah, I would have to think about what the criterion of best means there. Most sustainable or kind of, highest value. I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah, when we get back to the Q&A, we'll get back to you. Good question. But thank you all very much. We welcome your questions during the Q&A time, and you're also very welcome to reach out to us if you have ideas for improving the rubric or examples we can add. And we hope this was useful. Now we'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Thanks so much, Mandi and Evan. That was really great information, and what a useful rubric. Can't wait to use that. Our next presenter, I'm Marla Spagarin. I'm the Adult Services Manager at the McHenry Public Library, also the current Vice President of LACONI POP. My next presenter is at a library very close to me, Martha Hansen. Has been with the Woodstock Public Library up here in Northwest Illinois since 1989, and currently serves as Assistant Director and Head of Adult Services, a role she has held since 2019. Throughout her tenure, Martha has been an advocate for accessibility and community engagement, working to eliminate barriers to library services and ensure that all patrons feel welcome and supported. This includes a range of initiatives aimed at strengthening community connections, such as the development of an on-site food pantry, a winter clothing exchange, and she is currently co-leading the library's native landscaping project that will support sustainability, community building, and intergenerational connections. It looks great. In her free time, Martha takes pottery classes at the local community college and loves camping and spending time outdoors. Martha, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm blown away by the first two presentations. And what I'm going to be sharing is how we at the Woodstock Library build community through sustainable practices, but also community practices to eliminate barriers to service, to allow our community as a whole to participate in the library and to support one another. The Woodstock Public Library is in the center of McHenry County in Illinois. And take a good look at the background here, because I'll be showing you a slide at the end of this was a before photo of what's going to be happening at the library here. And what we have to show support is we have our food pantry. It is out on the entryway of the library. We have a cold weather clothing exchange, a seed library, greeting card exchange. We offer free hygiene products in all of our main floor restrooms. We provide an office supply station and document shredder for those who are working on projects in the library. We have a knitting needle and crochet hook exchange. We have a jigsaw puzzle exchange. We do a yearly community jigsaw puzzle challenge. The last 2 years it has been an 18,000 piece puzzle. We might take it down a notch and do a smaller one next year. And we also have a public play piano. But where it started was 10 years ago. We had a young father bring his children for story time in the evening, one of the bitter winter nights, and the kids had mittens on and coats, but he was using socks for mittens because he had no gloves for himself. So one of our staff members dug through our lost and found him a pair of gloves that he could use. And then the next morning, the staff, we had a conversation and said, we can do better than that. And so we took a Rubbermaid tub from the basement. We all donated some gloves or extra mittens that we had, and it started our cold weather bin in 2015. 4 years later, because of increased need and demand and requests and offers of coats, we started a coat exchange also. This is from the first year, and you can see we had little tags on the coat rack because we were very afraid that patrons would come in and think we were just providing a coat rack for them to use while they're in the library. So we put tags on all the coats, and after the first year, we realized it really wasn't necessary. The signage was sufficient. And everything is provided through community donations. At this point, all we did is provided existing coat rack, existing bin, and the community learned about it and brought in the resources, the coats, hats, mittens, gloves, to sustain the program. In 2020, with the success of the cold weather bin already established, we every February would do Foods for Fines, which a lot of area libraries did. But in February 2020 is the first time I noticed personally that people would kind of walk by the cart where the donations were coming in and slide a can of soup out of it, take a box of macaroni. And it became clear that the need for the food was so immediate that we wanted to see what we could do. The Woodstock Library, we are in the center of town on a residential street. There is a city food pantry or a nonprofit food pantry, but is on the outskirts of town, so a good 2 miles from us and not in a residential area. So pretty much anybody wanting to use it would have to drive out there. And so we started a food pantry that February, and this is an old Demco CD rack that we weren't using. We started with staff donations, publicized it, and immediately started getting community donations in it. And this location is near our front entrance, but in a discreet location. We wanted to respect the people, that we didn't want them to feel intimidated by getting food out of where other folks could see. At the time, we thought that was important. But then, of course, the pandemic hit. And so our food pantry went again back into Rubbermaid tubs, and we had them outside in March. We had 2 tubs. The need was so strong. We took out our old cabinet that we had in April, and by May we had gone to Menards and gotten a shed so that we could fully provide adequate food for the demand that the pantry was receiving. And the support for people providing donations was extremely high. A lot of times we found that people want to help, but they don't have the vehicle to do so. And by providing the pantry, we were providing the vehicle that they needed to help others in the community. And if you don't know Woodstock, Groundhog Day, the movie was filmed here, and we have Woodstock Willie. So Woodstock Willie kindly dropped by to promote the pantry and stock it with supplies one afternoon for us. And this is what our pantry looks like today. We no longer are using the old CD rack. We had a local company offer and donate to build custom pantry shelving unit for us. We have 3 pieces. I'll show the other one in the first. And this is a real-time photo. Didn't try to straighten it up too much. It is extremely organic in that you never know what's going to be there. When you're relying on community donations, some days there's so much food and some days there's very few foods. And then the vegetables, with our seed library, we invite people to bring the vegetables that they grow from the seeds they got from the seed library back to the pantry, and that has worked really well. We offer bags. We have plastic bags, and then we also put in reusable bags. We're fortunate in Woodstock that there's actually a bag manufacturer who we can go and get their misprints when they've made an error or had too much of a run. We can get the bags from them. So they can be anything from you never know what's going to be printed on the bag, but it doesn't matter. We're just helping provide use for the bags and sharing them with the community. And this is what it looks like when we have the winter coat rack in. So everything is on wheels, so we can move it around for cleaning, or sometimes we have to have different events, so we have to move it. The coat rack just comes out from late October into March, whenever things are, the temperatures are steadily over 40 degrees. We roll it back into a staff area. And so another typical day. And we also have when we get a lot of coats, especially in the beginning of the summer, we have 2 racks, one for children's coats and one for adult coats. Maintaining the food pantry, we rely on volunteers quite a bit. We're trying to build an easier way to make community members able to easily walk in, take a look at the pantry, do a little bit of straightening, know what to look for. So it's not just the library volunteers doing it, but the entire community keeping an eye on the pantry and keeping things moving. So we have our training list that we built off of the health department guidelines from Illinois and Wisconsin. Sell by doesn't mean bad buy information that. And then we also have our promotional materials. These are things that are in constant need at our pantry, so we make those available and periodically share them on social media. Impacts and considerations if you're considering starting a pantry. For our community, the need is great. My office is in alignment with the front door, so I can see who's at the pantry, and there's easily between 3 or 4 people at the pantry every hour that we're open getting food. So the demand is high for our community. It builds community support. It lets the people in need know that we are a place they can come, that we can support them and help them and provide some basic essentials, and that can build into something more regular library use. And it also provides a vehicle for the community to support others. So it's mutually beneficial. And important consideration, training volunteers so that they know what to look at. The biggest challenge is donations are very sporadic. You never know when you're going to get the next big donation. The past 2 weeks, the homecoming committees for both high schools did a food drive. So we got 2 pickup truckfuls of donations, which is tremendous. And we had a heads up so we could have volunteers ready to handle it. But sometimes people just arrive and we're not expecting it. And then staff has to scramble. And we have a system in place to handle that. Having to deal with unwanted items is a constant issue. Fresh and frozen meat, we have no place for it and people want to donate it. So having someone regularly checking on the pantry to make sure that nothing untoward is in there is good. Providing the bags, reusable if possible, plastic if not. We take the donated plastic bags that people give us and use those. We want the library to be welcoming, and since the pantry is literally in our front entranceway, we work hard on keeping the area tidy. We're fortunate to have a small storage area that when we do get the big donations, we can store them off away from the public area and bring them out as needed. And the one thing I'd never anticipated being a problem is cardboard. All donations come in cardboard boxes of all shapes, sizes. We reuse what we can. If they're in good condition, we can put them out for free boxes, but there's always more cardboard. We are fortunate in that we have someone who delivers bread to the local area grocery stores that we're the last stop, and he brings in all the bread that he had to pull off of the store shelves, but still has is still in good shape. So he'll bring in 5, 6, 7 boxes, all in those big banana boxes, 2, 3 times a week. So that's a lot. And the bread goes out. It's wonderful having it. We can definitely use it, but again, more cardboard than one you'd anticipate. I showed the picture of the pantry all full and beautiful. This is what it looked like at the end of August. And again, community support. A patron came by, saw the shelves were empty, made the post. Within 24 hours, the shelves were overflowing. We had plenty of food to bring back to our storage area. And that is what it's all about, is supporting one another. Sometimes you get things you don't want. This was a few years ago. I don't know what was up with the tomato soup, but we had so much soup that we did a tomato soup giveaway. Another time we received a very, very large case of spaghetti squash. I don't know how many pounds of spaghetti squash, and no one was taking it. And so then we put out the recipes. We put out recipes, and then people started taking it because they didn't know what to do with the squash. So we provided them information. After we started the food pantry, we had the seed library started. So, and we received a large donation of seeds that had been pulled off out of a local store, and the store brought them to us to see. It was the end of the growing season to see if we wanted them, and of course we did. So we grabbed our last piece of card catalog furniture that we had, and the next spring we opened our seed library. And again, we invite folks to have it to ask extra vegetables and fruit to donate them to the library, to the food pantry. And from that sprang Gardener Tom. Gardener Tom is a very lovely older gentleman who used to have a very, very large home garden. He was getting older, couldn't maintain it as big as he wanted, but he still wanted to spread the love of gardening. And so without telling us, one day he just showed up and put hundreds of seedlings out on our curved bench here, and offered them for free. And he color codes the plants according to what type of plant they are, to the color of the cup. He makes his handmade signs, and he's done it for 3 or 4 years in a row now. And it's always a great day when Gardener Tom just stops by and shares with community. And here are some of the other things that I mentioned we have. We have the knitting needle and crochet hook exchange that you can just drop off spare needles or hooks so that other people can use them. We offer reading glasses in several different areas in the library so that people have realized they forgot their cheaters, they can just use the ones here. We have a greeting card exchange so that if you need just a thank you card, a get well card, you can come to the library, find the card you need, or donate the ones you don't want. Chessboard, of course. We offer free hygiene products in all of our main floor restrooms. We also have diapers and wipes available in the children's department because we don't want a empty diaper bag to mean that a family has to go home. So we offer those as well. We have the office supply station. Below it is a paper shredder. So just anything you might need from a calculator to a staple remover, whiteout, have it. We have a public phone. It is simply one of our library staff phones that's dedicated for the public. And we have it in a more or less quiet location along with social service numbers, paper, pencil, calendar that people can be comfortable using. We have a travel brochure and map exchange. So if you come back from a trip and you have lots of maps or brochures that you've picked up along the way, you can put them in and then they're free for the next person to take and return or not return, add something new. It works. Our Library of Things has a variety of items that you might only need use once, knife sharpener, emergency solar powered battery packs, etc. And I mentioned our jigsaw puzzle exchange, or excuse me, we have a jigsaw puzzle exchange, and then for 2 years we've done 18,000 piece puzzle. This is this year. It took 9 months. We did not anticipate it taking that long. That's the completed puzzle. Last year only took 4 months, so this was a much harder puzzle. The elephants were a challenge. And this actually just went up. I added this slide right before the program started. We're having a community ofrenda. Our community is 30 to 35% Latino. And it's again a way to build and show community. So we're inviting families to bring in photos of their loved one and add it to our community ofrenda. We also have a public play piano. It's available that's our front desk over here. So get some amazing concerts being played here. We have a album listening station and we also circulate records. And so what's next? I referenced our new landscaping project. And what we're doing is transforming our grounds into vibrant, sustainable spaces that restore the native habitat, support pollinators, and creating interactive spaces for families' intergenerational sharing. And so this is what that project looks like right now. This is the curved bench where the seedlings were. And so this is a new pathway leading to an outdoor space that will have sunshades on them that we can use for programming or just creative spaces. And we have 2 planters that we're working with the garden clubs to figure out what those will be like, as well as native plants and native cultivars to invite pollinators. And it's already working. And the next year, we're really excited. We are going to be hosting a resource fair. It's going to be once a month to invite community organizations to a tabling event for 2 hours where community members can know and find out different resources that are available in the community. And this is being modeled after the really successful one at the Zion Benton Public Library in Lake County. And we're really excited for this next step, and we're already have our first one planned for January. And I am Martha Hansen. I invite you, if you're ever in the area, to stop by, see what we're offering, or if you have any questions or want clarification, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, Martha. That was amazing. You do so much. I'm sure your community is thrilled. All right, we're on to the Q&A. We've got a few. I'll give Martha a break. I'm Chelsea Lord. I'm the adult programming librarian at the Mount Prospect Public Library, and I also serve on the LACONI Pop Advisory Board. So our first question in the Q&A, I'll go back to Evan and Mandi. Do you have any tips and suggestions of how to avoid companies who do greenwashing to get customers?
Yeah, I would say go to those sorts of certification or standard setting organizations like Ecotech is one I discovered somewhat recently. It's spelled kind of strangely OEKO. I think it's like a German kind of spelling and then TEX. There's a few others out there, but they kind of look at the materials that things are made of. I think Underwriters Labs has some certifications too for cloth materials that are not made with formaldehyde or don't have volatile organic compounds. So I would start with the certifying organizations, and they usually have lists of products that they certify. Now, it probably costs companies to do that, and so maybe there's good products out there that haven't sought out that certification, but that's one way to go. Because it is problematic when companies just say their product is green or natural or whatever, and those are just utterly meaningless terms. So that's my answer. I don't know if Mandi has anything separate to say.
Not really. Yeah, I think kind of just taking a look at what the product is made of is helpful, instead of following, like Evan just said, if it says it's green or it's natural, like those sorts of things aren't actually that helpful. Rebecca, do you have? I saw
We
you.
actually put together a list for our business office to kind of know what to look for. But one of the things I learned while we were doing that research was it should be third-party verification, not an industry stamp. And that's like one of your first clues, like who actually gave that certification? Or, so I think you start to learn the cues. It's like a visual literacy you almost build over time to recognize greenwashing versus legit places. And there's certainly more than there was 10 years ago, but there's a pretty standard group of folks that are certifying things in each industry. So it's something you have to build that muscle over time to recognize. But I think Evan and Mandi gave you some great clues of where to start.
All right, thank you. And I think we're going back to Martha. In the chat, we've got, are you using travel-sized hygiene products for people to take or use? How does that work?
At this point, we're just relying on donations. So when people call up to say, I want to donate something, what should I donate? And hygiene products is the number one item for the pantry. And I just realized you might be meaning in our restrooms. For the restrooms, they're individual. So the dispenser I showed is where you would put a quarter and hit the button. It's marked free, and you just press the button and it'll dispense one. In the single stall restrooms, we have the holder that you can stack them up, and it has not been a problem with people taking all of them. What I learned at the Zion Benton Library is they have comfort stations in their different departments, and they use an Amazon wish list and they've pre-selected individual packages for hygiene products, and we're going to be starting that to put out with our pantry. It's a challenge. A lot of times people will donate the Costco, 10 toothbrushes in one container, which isn't really helpful because it'll help a family if you have 8 mouths you need to brush, but we're looking for smaller size donations for the pantry area.
All right, and with that, we've got some pantry questions. Do you have any issues with the fresh produce, like bugs, pests, or things not being taken before they go bad?
Not generally, because it is in our front entrance and a lot of our staff and volunteers come in that way, you grab the bad apple out of the bunch. When we get donations of like a lot of times you're getting 5 pounds of apples in sacks, like a whole box of them. So we'll put some out as individually in a basket, and other ones will stay in the bag so they can grab the whole bag. We did have a volunteer who brought some produce back into our storage area that I had mentioned, and no one knew it was tucked into the box, and fruit flies were discovered. So we now have fruit fly traps, but that was a singular item, singular time.
And the follow-up concerning the pantry, how often do you need to weed this type of area?
It self weeds. It is. We probably are restocking it 2 to 3 times a day. We have a really high demand for the food, so it doesn't linger very long. We also have our volunteers and the staff at part of the closing things. They just check for things that shouldn't be there. A can that's bulging isn't safe no matter what the date is on it, and everybody knows to dispose of those. So it's just a continual process.
Lots of checking.
Yeah.
And another question for you. Have you had anyone, staff, board, or community members express a concern over this inviting the wrong crowd, quote unquote, to the community? This person would love to copy all of this, but anticipates a little bit of pushback, unfortunately.
Right. The city does a annual community survey, and it's been run for 2 years in a row now. And it would say it is 5 to 1 the people who comment and compliment the library for the pantry versus the person who's begrudging or complaining about it. So we're still getting a lot of support, but we're very cognizant, and that's why it is in our entrance to the library. So we want to be welcoming, and so we want it to look neat and presentable. So that takes a continual effort to do so.
And one more for the pantry. How often does the Department of Human Services evaluate the food pantry?
We had the health department comes out and does an event every quarter. They're out here, so they are aware of us. Because we're not doing a prepared foods, any home baked items are not going out in the pantry. So it's all stuff that has been gotten from the garden or from the grocery stores. They don't have an issue with it.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other questions, so if anyone wants to pop any in the Q&A or in the chat, feel free if anything comes to mind. And I think we got our initial question of what's the most popular swag answered. And I know I gave away stainless steel water bottles, and those were a surprise, and they were pretty popular. All right. And I think that concludes us here. Natalie, did you have a conclusion for us?
No, thank you everybody so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were here. Thank you to all of our amazing panelists, Rebekkah, Mandi, Evan, Martha. So insightful and informative. I was furiously writing notes, so thank you so much for being here today. We hope the rest of you enjoy your afternoon, and we hope to see you back for the next LACONI webinar in November. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.